We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Shore Capital. In today's venture capital world, it's not just about cash. It's about relationships. Capital is harder to find, limited investors have fewer managers that they can trust, and the industry is just filled with far too much hype. Shore Capital is an early-stage venture fund investing in the world's most ruthlessly iterative founders, helping its limited partners to find founders who are solving the world's most dynamic problems, teams that excel in mastering the idea maze, teams moving with a rapid, iterative velocity and demonstrating radical resourcefulness. Shore Capital doesn't just write checks, though. They become fractional co-founders when needed, offering strategic support, high-leverage relationship development, and a deep commitment to the long-term success of their portfolio companies. If you are a ruthlessly iterative founder with a bold vision or a limited investor seeking sustained access to the brightest big thinkers of our time, Shore Capital wants to meet you. So visit shorecapital.notion.site to learn more.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hey, it's me. It is Friday. Happy Friday, and welcome back to the latest episode, installment, gathering, moment of Stoppage Time with me. It's Friday, October 3rd. And you know what I've been thinking about this week? And this is going to be kind of unconventional, but I want you to bear with me as we talk about it, because I think you'll appreciate this as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as a tech innovator. We're talking about tension. Yeah, that's right. Tension, right? We all feel it at different times. We all feel it in different ways. And generally, as human beings, we assume that tension implies like a negative energy. And frankly, often it does. But what got me thinking about tension this week was more about how it relates to progress and entrepreneurial or innovative thinking. I thought a lot about tension this week, both in my own life and our business, as well as kind of our macro political climate and just life in the world in general, as kind of the space in between things or places. So I thought about it less like a weight that sits on our shoulders, which we often treat it as. And I thought much more about it as kind of the tension is the space and time that exists between maybe where we're going, where we are, and maybe even a little bit of the pull of how we got here. So about 8 years ago, while living in Santiago, Chile, I met an author named Navi Raju, and Navi wrote a book called Jugaad Innovation. And this will be in the show notes. So you don't have to worry about how to spell that. And the subtitle of the book was Think Frugal, Be Flexible, Generate Breakthrough Growth. And in this book and the talk that I heard him give in person there, he shared dozens of stories around this Hindu word for innovation, Jugaad, and the concepts of bottoms-up, bootstrapped innovation that is not born of like big labs or government programs or even massive venture capital investment, but instead happens in villages, on the dusty floors of shacks, driven by people who in many cases are desperately seeking solutions to the day-to-day tensions or problems that they face in their lives. He tells these incredible stories throughout the book, stories where people were driven by the tension of what they lacked, or the tension of the obstacles in their way, or the tension about their particular caste or station in life, so to speak, societally. And these stories were basically where simple everyday people turned this tension into their fuel to expand their thinking. And that has stuck with me for years. I've referenced the book oftentimes over the last 8 years. I've referred the book to mentees of mine. I've referred the book to both entrepreneurs and investors as an alternative way to think about this big topic of innovation, which we always in the West seem to associate with money. And in my present day life, we can argue that there is a tension everywhere at a human level, right? In the United States, in our politics, as I've talked about a lot lately here on the show with you all, they're super tension filled right now, right? Our culture feels tense. Everybody feels on edge with our neighbors or the people we run into in traffic or on the bus. I was just telling a story to a friend last night about he's a bicyclist and he has had a lot of very tense dangerous encounters with cars and drivers this year. And I was talking to him about how I encounter drivers as I go out on my long walks every night throughout the city and across streets and traffics and crossing highways, and how I always make eye contact with the drivers that are in lanes near me or next to me or that I'll be crossing in front of. And there's just this tension that he and I both recognize, right? In many ways, this tension is born of distrust of those around us, but it's also born of just the pressures that people feel to create and or to provide for their families. Again, and it's ramped up in an uncertain environment when the things around us are swirling at a pace that we can't understand. We can choose to react to that tension in our lives and our businesses and our work with fear, with anger, with frustration or sadness, or we can accept the tension as some sort of an external factor that is forcing upon us a life or outcomes that we don't want, right? And therefore, we often will take that tension and we'll turn it into victimhood, and we'll use it as a tool to blame or as a cudgel to point at others. Or, and this is where it gets fun, right? We can choose to embrace this tension emotionally and creatively. We can lean into the tension that exists around us, and we can use it as fuel to inspire us, much like the people in Robbie's book have over the course of history, right? We can use it to inspire us to think about ways out, to think about how to come up with solutions to our problems. We can contemplate ways, much like those inventors in rural India, that we can create a better way forward, right? Make whatever it is that it lies on the other side of this tense moment different than the moment that we left before it, right? So in my life right now, there's a constant tension to sell, to create enough sponsor income in order to take care of our team, to pay my bills, to keep each project moving forward each month. Obviously, I'd rather this tension didn't exist, right? But at my best, I can accept it, I can process it, I can turn it into energy to push myself forward each week, to invite the next sponsorship conversation or discuss the next studio services client project, to ask for help where we need it, or to make the hard decisions and have the tough conversations that I have to have occasionally to hold us together and to persist forward towards what's possible. There's also a creative tension in our week each week that to prepare the best possible interview conversations for our guests. There's a creative tension for Deanna and I, our superstar show producer, to create the shows that we release each week while preparing the next project or supporting our new studio clients in their show creation. At my worst, I let that tension get to me. I make it a weight on my shoulders. I let it become stress. I let it become negative energy that saps me of my focus and of my resolve on my worst days. Right there in that mental and emotional battle as an entrepreneur, there is tension tugging at and pulling at me on a daily basis. Again, the tension alone is not a bad thing, but how I choose to react to it, or you choose to react to it as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as an entrepreneurial thinker in your career, how we choose to react to it could become a bad thing. In my conversations this week with this week's guest on the latest episode of Entrepreneurial Thinkers, this amazing woman, Marisa Ritzy P, Estrada Rivera, we talked about creative tension, and we talked about the tension that comes sometimes from having to figure it all out as a single mom. We talked about the tension that can exist in spaces where historically maybe not many women, or even more specifically, many women or women of color or Latinas like Marisa have been. Rooms where she is the new face, communities where she has to use her voice to advocate for others and to talk with them, like on her podcast, Word to Your Mama, where she helps give voice to these tensions that exist in today's world for people who didn't necessarily come up like I did, but maybe came up like she did with tensions and obstacles around them, right? And as I think about the premise of our show, just the fundamental thesis behind Entrepreneurial Thinkers, it's this idea that there is a belief that the world does not only need more investors or more entrepreneurs, but in fact, we need more entrepreneurial thinkers across every sector and segment of society and industry. People who will think differently about the problems and opportunities that we're facing, so that hopefully we can leave the world a little bit better than we found it, right? That's a recognition of the tensions that exist in our world. There will always be tension. There will always be problems to solve. And we need for there to be space for people to emerge from new points of view who can help us understand that these tensions can become amazing catalysts for new, better solutions to our newest and or most persistent, biggest problems. My big lesson takeaway this week was that the tension in and of itself is not the problem. I oftentimes have associated the word tension, just like stress, with only negative emotions, right? And instead, what I'm learning now as I thought about these thoughtful people that I'm surrounded by, as I think about the conversations I get to have with these incredible entrepreneurial thinkers, or books that I've read, like Navi's book, Jugaad Innovation, it's how we react to and choose to move through the tension in our lives that will matter most in the long run. We can, as Navi suggests in his subtitle, think frugally, be flexible, and I'd add even more, maybe be patient and open-minded. And from there, we can use that tension to propel us all forward into periods of breakthrough growth, as he says. Since the pandemic, and definitely within our present authoritarian political situation here in the United States, I've felt like we were in an era filled with extraordinary tension. But I also naively thought that we might have kind of gotten past that by now, 2025, and be well on our way back to normal, when maybe the real lesson that I needed to take away from this era that we're in the midst of right now is that we're stuck still inside of this tension created by the pull of a familiar past and the unknown, but potentially better version of our future. Of late, as I've listened to more and more conversations and I've thought more calmly about the long-term lifespan of my grandson, Leo, who will long outlive me. By the way, he turns 1 this month in October, so exciting times ahead. I've begun to think that we're really just in the middle of a transitional tension right now, that when we emerge out the other side, maybe by the early 2030s, we'll emerge into a new normal, a better way forward, more equitable, more accessible, more fair-minded. And when we get there, it'll be because of the entrepreneurial thinkers who I get the privilege of speaking to every week, that you get the privilege and honor to listen to every week and learn from, and how they see and feel the same tensions that we are, but how they choose to attack it with a pragmatic, optimistic eye, and how they're using those same tensions to stretch their minds further than any of us had maybe thought of. And you know what they say? My dad used to say this about a rubber band that gets stretched tensely further than it's ever been. Think about that, stretching that rubber band. That's tension, right? That rubber band never returns to its original shape. It's forever bigger and more capable. And that's what I want to leave you with this week. Aside from my normal wishes of joy and that you have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend, I want to leave you with a little bit of a fresh perspective, such as I'm finding, in which we process these tensions in our lives as opportunities for growth and original thinking, and not as anchors around our possibilities. I will see you right back here next Thursday with another incredible conversation with one of these entrepreneurial thinkers on the Entrepreneurial Thinker Show, wherever you listen to or watch podcasts. And then, as always, I'll be back here with you next Friday for another edition of Stoppage Time with me, Uncle Rob, as we explore whatever it is that fancies my mind or challenges me to think differently next week, as I try to navigate the tension of my life, no differently than you all are, as we all try to get forward to leave this world and our lives a little bit better than we found them. So peace. Have an awesome weekend.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at eSudo. You know, running any business, but especially a law firm, means balancing a lot. And technology, frankly, shouldn't be a headache. eSudo makes information technology and cybersecurity simple for law firms large or small. With over 20 years of experience, they specialize in everything from Microsoft 365 management to advanced cybersecurity solutions. They help you to stay ahead of threats, manage your data securely, and keep your tech running smoothly so that you can focus on what matters most, your clients. eSudo understands the legal industry's unique needs, offering tailored solutions to ensure that your firm is always in compliance and always protected. Are you ready to upgrade your firm's technology or get help with your questions? Visit esudo.com.